Folks, so praying about what to say, and it is stepping out. It is very new. This is for me. Certainly out of my comfort zone, that's for sure. But this is how you grow. This is how God wants us to move on, to keep growing. And I suspect, I have a suspicion that God. Well, I know he's got a sense of humour, but I definitely think he's a practical joker as well. Because when I was praying about what to bring, what to share, he said wisdom. I'm like, wisdom? You want me to share wisdom? You know, me. Now, I am pretty sure I'm the daftest person I've ever met. And as I got an amen from somebody in the worship group there, and I'm like, wisdom. So I dismissed it. I said, no way. Wisdom is not something I usually bring to a room. Michelle's grinning at me over there. I don't know why, but wisdom is not something I normally bring to something. Daftness, silliness. And I said, Lord, are you sure? Are you sure? Have you met me, Lord? You know me, yeah, daftness, I can do daft. Just ask the worship group, they'll tell you I can do daft. They're backing me up against it, absolutely there. So daft I can do. So wisdom is definitely out of my comfort zone. So I'm praying about this, and I'm dismissing it, and I'm trying to find other things to talk about, because wisdom is not usually my thing. Fortunately, we can ask God for wisdom. Fortunately. Because that's what Solomon did in Chronicles, in 2 Chronicles, verse 1 to 12. Have we got that, Irene? And now Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and the Lord his God was with him and exalted him exceedingly. And Solomon spoke to all Israel, to the captains of thousands and of hundreds, and to the judges. But there was a part when Solomon asked for wisdom. Have we got there yet too? To put a little bit where wisdom and Solomon. But there was a part when he asked God for wisdom. He didn't want something else. He didn't want victory over his enemies or death. He wanted wisdom. He wanted to know what to do. And that was something I wanted wisdom for. You know, there's so many battles going on in this church. People going through so many things with finances and jobs, and even people losing their homes through no fault of their own. And you're watching it going on in this world. And it was amazing how Solomon wanted wisdom, not for himself, but so he could help his people. He could lead his people. He didn't want riches. That just seemed to come along with it. I suppose if you've got a bit of brains, you can end up being clever enough to earn a few quid. So, you know, it really is. Now give me wisdom and knowledge that I may go out and come in before this people, for who can judge this great people of yours. He just wanted wisdom to be able to help his people. And I found that interesting, because I've never thought of myself as wise. But we have to be at the moment. We're seeing corrupt governments corrupt everything at the moment. It's quite shocking how things are and what's going on. And it looks like madness. Yeah, it does. It looks like madness. And something that I've heard Christians say a lot of is, I don't watch the news. And I sort of agree with that. I mean, me and Andy Worley, we sort of joked about like how we have to bolt the TV down now so we don't throw it out the window. Because every time you just want to, or put something through it. You know what I mean? It really is. You see the rubbish that is spouted, the distraction that's going on. And I can understand how Christians say, we don't want to watch the news. We see the rubbish that's going on. Recently there was a court case, and it cost thousands and thousands of pounds, probably tens of thousands of pounds, about common sense, like a biological man is a biological man and a woman is a biological woman. But he had to go to court to discuss it at the cost of thousands of pounds, just for some, well, you know, for the obvious. This is how the enemy works, doesn't it? Let's just distract everything. Let's just cause one big argument and it'll cost everybody a fortune. And when common sense sometimes and usually prevails, the answer was obvious all along. That's how I say. I can see why people don't want to watch the news, but I feel we have to. Yes, 100%, 99% of it is rubbish and waffle and, you know, distraction. But there's always that danger that 1% is going to be dangerous, and we've got to keep an eye out for it. We've got to be watchmen. Ignoring what is going on in the world is not wise. It's how we react to it. We're in the world, but not of the world. I think that's... I've got that for the... Yeah, John. It's John 17. Henri. Just as I am not of the world. I do not pray that you should take them out of the world. That's right. You should take them out of the world, but that you should keep them from the evil one. There's evil about. But we have no choice. We live in the world. Nobody gets out of the world alive. You know what I mean? Not physically anyway. So we can't go around ignoring things. We need to be alert. We need to be watchmen. Because most of it is rubbish and it's distraction. It's how the devil works. It's how the enemy works. He wants distraction. But there'll be the one thing that we miss. Something I found interesting is that we have to be on our guard. In Nehemiah 4:17, when they were rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, it had been destroyed some years earlier in Kings, and they were building the wall. But something I found interesting is while they were rebuilding, and we're building the kingdom of God on this planet, while they were rebuilding the wall, they would be there with I'm assuming a trowel or a hammer in one hand and a sword ready to fight. They were watching, although yes, we're building the kingdom, we're building Jesus' kingdom, God's kingdom, and so we've still got to be alert and wise. They were ready to fight if need be. I thought that was really interesting. And to do that, we've got to wear the armour of God. Now, I was really bad. This armour of God thing, I never understood, and I never looked into it. And I read it in Ephesians about the whole armour of God, about everything that we need. And I used to walk around, I mean, the enemy was laughing at me because I'd get up in the morning and I was walking around spiritually naked. So I was being picked off at every opportunity. The enemy have a go at me. And this is it. We have to be. We're in a fight. We're in a battle. And the world can't see that there's a battle going on. They just see madness. They just see Starmer doing things and Trump doing things and whoever mention it and running off and chaos. We know the spiritual battle behind it. We know when we're coming under attack, when some of us lose our homes, our jobs and finances, illness hits us. We know that God is with us, and we know that we have to stand and fight. It's a difficult thing to do, but we can't do that without the armour of God. Something that has been a real eye-opener to me is the armour of God. Is putting that on. Otherwise, I think I'd have been obliterated with the last 2 years. The attacks that have come we've come under in the last 2 years. Not just myself, but people on the worship team, people in the church. The attacks that have come under have been tremendous. And I bless people in this church who've stood by me and supported me and Shell in all sorts of ways. And I bless you all for that. For the prayer, for the spiritual prayer, for the standing with us in prayer, standing with us in practical ways, and even financial ways. So I'd just like to thank you folks for that. And Lord, I thank you that we have that armour of God, that you don't just leave us walking through this world naked. that we can fight back. I love it. I love the armour. I love the biggest thing for me, the sword of the Spirit and truth. His word. That's the one you go on the attack. I'm not good at defence. I'm not good at defence. Believe it or not, I used to love to play rugby, and I was a better rugby player than I was a footballer, and I was quite good at soccer. But I would just charge. It's like what's going on Woodrow tonight. Charge. That's the feeling of that. I'm digressing now. I can see why Aaron goes off on the tangent. I understand what he does. But there's so much, and we've got the armour of God, because these days are evil, and it's obvious. People who are non-Christians can see it's evil, but they don't see the spiritual connotation behind it. One of the things we've got India and Pakistan now rearing up at each other. I think they've just started to have a chat about it, because I mean, common sense, I would imagine, has got to prevail there, because they're both nuclear powers. So if you start bombing each other, and they're right next to each other, so it's like throwing a nuclear weapon up in the air. It's going to land back on you. It's like, but you can see everything, the madness that's going on in the world. And I remember a place I used to work, and they said, we can't understand why how nuclear war hasn't happened already. I said, because God hasn't allowed it. These people think, Putin and all these people think that the dictators of this world, they think they're in charge. But God always has the final say, whether they know it or not. We haven't had a nuclear war because God is not allowing it yet. I don't know if that's going to change. That's up to God. But these people forget who's really in charge, and a lot of them have no idea who's really in charge. They have no complex of God. They don't know who He is. He's just somebody they hear about at Christmas and Easter. And I find that extraordinary. So I walk around now with the armour of God on. First thing I do is I sit at the side of my bed and put it as if I'm getting dressed, and I will speak it out. The belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness. I will speak it out so the enemy can physically hear, I'm armed. You want to mess with me? I'm armed and dangerous. And I make sure. It's like when I worship. I don't see the point of quiet worship. If I'm going to worship, I'm going to sing my heart out. I walk away from here a regular horse. Because I've sung my heart out. I want the Lord to know that I love Him so much that I will sing my heart out. I want the enemy to know that I love the Lord so much, and I want to give the enemy a headache. You know what I mean? That's my feeling. What's the point in worshipping quietly and timidly? We're not called to be timid. We're not called to be timid Christians. We're called to make a difference on this earth. We are God's voice on this earth, because although we can hear God, people who don't know God cannot hear God. So we're the voice of sanity in a way, of wisdom. From me, okay. As I say, I think when God said this talk about wisdom, and you couldn't have picked a worse person to choose to talk about wisdom, but He did. But then you sort of see, what's it there? I was just thinking he chooses the foolish to confound the wise, which I think is rather good. Well, I'm pretty foolish. Shall I tell you that? I've done some daft things, and so and the worship group will back me up on that one as well. They will. I'm pretty sure they will. But one of the things that I have sort of a natural instinct of wisdom when I was growing up. I'd see some of my friends, and they would get involved in drugs and things like that. I've never done drugs. I've never seen the logic. It's never been my thing. I just think it's stupid. So that was a wisdom in its way, although I didn't know it. Even before I knew Christ, when there was, they'd do Ouija board things and tarot cards, I think they call them. And I'd walk out the room. There was just an instinct, before I even knew Christ, there was just an instinct to get out of that room. And I could never understand it, but I remember some friends of mine, they did something called magic mushrooms. And I'll never forget, and I think I shared it in Birmingham Church, and say his name was Dougie. His name wasn't Dougie, but his name was Dougie. And he was really into these magic mushrooms. And it's like they make him into a tea and drink it, apparently. And it was a drug. And he watched the Superman movie, and he just got it in his head that he could fly. It was just in his head that he could fly because he'd done a stupid thing, not being wise, into these drugs. And it's just tea. I'm not really doing drugs. He's in a wheelchair, or last time I saw him, which was about 10 years ago, he's in a wheelchair because he was determined to fly. And he flew out of a fourth floor balcony. And for about 2 seconds he flew, he got his wish, but the rest of the time, for the rest of his life, he was in a wheelchair because he broke his back just from below his shoulder blades. I had a wise man, and I shared this with James the other day, a wise man once said, this isn't scriptural, but a wise man once said, if you get out of your head, something else will get in. So I've never understood drugs. I've never, as a non-Christian, why people got involved in that stuff, I do not know. Why people get blind, drunk and paralytic, I do not know. I like a pint. But getting blind, drunk and out of your head, you get out of your head, something else will get in. It's madness. We've got to be wise. There are sensible, common sense wise. Something that, as I say, we're being watchful. Something that interested me, and some of my friends were talking about, and they were well peeved about this. It really annoyed them. And it was the King's speech. Now again, I was like, oh, okay, well, what of it? So can we put the King's speech up? Yeah. King Charles wrote, one of the puzzles of our humanity is how we are capable of both great cruelty and great kindness. This paradox of human life runs through the Easter story and in the scenes that daily come before our eyes. At one moment, terrible images of human suffering, and in another, heroic acts in war-torn countries where humanitarians of every kind risk their own lives to protect the lives of others. A few weeks ago, I met such people at reception at Buckingham Palace. He had profound sense of admiration for their resilience, courage and compassion, if we can carry on. And on Maundy Thursday, Jesus knelt and washed the feet of many of those who would abandon him. His humble action was a token of his love that knew no bounds or boundaries, and that is central to Christian belief. Yeah, great. If we can keep going. The love he showed when he walked the earth reflected the Jewish ethic of caring for the stranger and those in need, and the deep human instinct echoed in Islam. I just don't get it. What's Islam got to do with Easter? Now, that's not having a go at Muslims and stuff, but why has he got to come out with a comment like that? I didn't see this speech. Now, that was unwise. He's just a man, and he doesn't know God. Clearly, he has no idea of Christ. I doubt very much that his mother, the late Queen, would have said something like that. I doubt very much. I'm very much a royalist. I love them to bits, but I've got to be honest with you. He don't interest me no more, Charles don't. Because I know he's supposed to be the defender of the faith. And hang on a minute, that ain't... Why have you come out with that then? And I can understand why friends of mine were getting mad about it. It ain't worth getting mad about. It's another distraction. It's another argument. It is what it is. He's just a man who obviously has no idea about any kind of religion, let alone Christ. Okay, that's what he is. He's defender of the faiths, which just doesn't make sense. It's illogical. I've got a fly around me. There we go. So I just thought that was really odd. And just looking into things, I thought, well, I wonder what the Archbishop of Canterbury would say about this. And then I find out that we technically haven't got one at the moment. It's something he's had to step down because of something he didn't say. There was something going on, and instead of standing strong and saying, this is wrong, I'll let you look into what it is. He himself hasn't been involved in abuse, as far as I'm aware, but he knew something that was going on, and he should have opened his mouth and put a stop to it. How many times do we see Christian churches and denominations, and us ourselves, when we see something is wrong, and we don't say, we don't speak about it? We're here as watchmen. The world, people who don't know Christ, just think it's chaos. We can see the spiritual battle. And I just find it astounding and annoying that churches, places like, in particular, people who have all this training, and you know that they don't just get there. They obviously go to theological schools and things like that to get where they are. I'm not academic. I'm not. I can't study. It's all I can do to read sometimes, but I can read. I learned to read very young. I could read when I went to school. I was like, well, you know, it's just something I can do, and I can read really quick. And I see some of these academic, ordained people, and they puzzle me. Something we did at Christmas, we went to, I'll say a big church. I ain't going to name it because I don't want anyone getting sued or whatever. I don't know if you can. But a big church, not 100 miles away from here. It's not a local church, but it will be at it. And there was a light show there, and I mean, it was fantastic. It's in an area that I love. It is an absolute area that I just love that area. And I was staggered because we went into this big church, and they had a light show. So, and before we went in there, you had the vicar and his wife, and all in the gowns, I think they call them, and they're just welcoming folks in. You go, come on in, yeah, lovely, you love this. And obviously ordained vicars and reverends. And I'm walking through there. So these people know, I'm assuming, would know Christ, and they would know right and wrong. And we were walking through there in the lights. So they had, and it was telling you about evolution in this big church, in this big church. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit odd. And then I was talking about space travel, okay. And then they had the lights come up with the signs of the zodiac. And I was like, Twiglet Zone, do. It was like, what? You know, you're in this, and it's a Christian building, a Christian church, and all them lights, and then you think, well, hang on a minute, these people are all ordained. They must know that, you know, and they agree with this. And I couldn't get I find things puzzling. And this is why we've got to be on guard. We've got to be watchmen, because there are ordained people who aren't, who are quite happy to just let these things go on. And we've got to stand strong, and we're just ordinary people. But when you look at the when he says fishers of men, come with me, I'll make you fishers of men, they were just ordinary people. They were fishermen. They probably stunk a bit as well, but you know, I would imagine they smelt a bit fishy. But you know, it's but they were just ordinary men. And I struggle a lot with things like that, and I can understand why people say, I can't be bothered to watch the TV. But we've got to watch the TV. There's so many things that are coming through. It'll get so distracting things banging through, and there's artificial intelligence now that's coming through. Wow, okay, that sounds like a virtual Tower of Babel to me, that does. You know, that's oof. Now alarm bells ring with that. Now I don't understand artificial intelligence. I have enough struggle with my own, to be honest with you. But artificial intelligence, that sounds real dangerous to me, that does. You know, why would we invent something that's cleverer than us? And there was a lady who came on the TV and said about it, and she said, well, we've got to be careful that we don't use it for something it shouldn't be used for. In other words, you know, well, I can guarantee that every country in this world who's got any kind of access to it is trying to weaponise it right now. And I just think, are people really that naive? I just find it hard. But as Christians, we know that the enemy is out to destroy. He's out to destroy us. One of the things that really spoke to me was, and I am jumping a bit because I'm aware that time's going on a bit, was the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19. I think I got that right. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptising them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Now that is interesting because I actually agree with the vision of this church. If I didn't, I wouldn't be involved in LBC. I'd be wasting my time. I've been in churches, and they're lovely churches with lovely people, and I'm not knocking them, and it's not meant as a knock, but they're still churches. I don't want to be in a church that's just doing church. I don't want to, we just turn up every Sunday and it's lovely, and we sing a few songs and pray a bit and then go home, and that's it. I want to be in a church that's doing this, that's doing the Great Commission, and that's why I like what Aaron has said, from here to the coast, to Europe and to the world. Because that's basically the Great Commission, isn't it? When you think about it, I thought, because that's what we're called to do. It's from here. And here, and believe me, we're under siege. You've only got to look outside that window now and see what things are, what shops are popping up and what's running them. We know a lot of them shops, there's no way that they're making a living out of that. Just what they're selling, because from what I can see, a lot of them ain't selling anything. There's nobody in there, so read as you will to that. But I know over Shrewsbury there's several shops that they knocked on the door and, well, what do you do for a living? It doesn't make sense. The footfall doesn't make sense to how much money you're earning. So we'll see. But we're under siege. One of the things I love about Woodrow, I'm really excited about Woodrow. I really am. When we was walking over there with James, I don't really get prompts in my spirit as such. But that's how it felt. It just felt like we was charging in. I've got to be here. The fields are white for harvest was what I felt as we were walking through Woodrow. That's what I felt. I thought, I've got to be there. That's why I'm there this afternoon, and as much as I can, just playing guitar. I'll let Nick do the preaching. He's much better at it than I am. But I can sing. That's my gift. I can sing and play guitar. I had a word years ago that I was a minstrel. So I'm a minstrel. I didn't know at the time what a minstrel was. I thought I was a kid. I don't know if you remember black and white minstrel. So I was like, minstrel. So that's what I sort of thought, well, minstrel. And I found out it's somebody who goes around. They were actually a guy who used to go singing, and he used to play lutes. That was original minstrels. And a bit of anybody who makes guitars, they're called luthiers. That's what they call guitar makers. Anyway, digressing. But I think at Woodrow, I'm really excited about it because it's not just like here, and bless you folks for, I hope you don't mind me calling you the old guard, and you stood firm and you prayed, well done. And we've come into reinforcements, a bit like the cavalry. But at Woodrow, we're actually planting. There isn't a church there. There's a little shop. There's like Oasis Christian Centre, but it's not a church. It belongs to a church that's way out of there in the town centre, not by Woodrow. Which is interesting, but we're actually going in there, and I felt the Lord prompt me. Fields are white for harvest. Get in there. So every chance I get, I'm over there, like this afternoon with Nick. I'll let him do the preaching. I'll just do the singing and worshipping and just lead people as best I can, because we've got to get there. Right now, there is so much going on. We've got the youth. Aaron was mentioning about the youth. Lots of youth coming to Christ. They're coming to Christ because there's nothing else. The only other thing is drugs. So you get the choice, they either turn to drugs to get out of it because they can't cope what's going on, or they turn to Christ because this world has nothing to offer them. My kids, they've got degrees coming out the ears, honestly, and struggling to find work. Hannah worked as a policewoman for a bit. She walked away from it because she just felt it was a waste of time, which is scary. Fortunately got a better job. But it is scary times. It is scary times. But the youth, they aren't stupid. Our youth ain't stupid. They've got more brains than we have. My kids have certainly got more brains than I've ever had. You know what I mean? They get them from Michelle. And but it's so they know that there's nothing. The government in this country got nothing to offer them. So they're turning to Christ because they can. So, I'm a boring you, sorry. I have that effect. But it's just incredible that the youth have got the common sense and the wisdom to turn to Christ, because they can see that the government ain't got the answers. Drugs ain't doing it for them. Alcohol ain't doing it for them. So there's a real upsurge in youths coming to Christ. When we was at Woodrow last week, it was wonderful. Lots of youngsters, they were very young. And two of them, they call them salvations, don't they? The one was 9, one was 11, but I mean, look, the kid who was 9, he looked about 12 to me. He was like, anyway. But he's, obviously they were with it. They weren't stupid. They knew what it was. And the one girl, and she made a commitment. And her friend who was slightly older than her said, no, I don't want it. But this girl made a commitment anyway. The youth in this country aren't stupid. The government may think they are, but they're not. They're very, very clever. They have more wisdom in them than I have at their age. The things I'm amazed I'm here. I was always breaking something when I was a youth. I was coming off my bike. That's how I learned to fly on my bike over the handlebars. But it was one of them things. But the youth today are realising Christ is the answer. And we've got to get out there and tell people about Christ. It was so interesting at Woodrow last week about the youngsters just wanting to come and know him, wanting to just coming in. And it was quite interesting. There was a guy there named Andy. I don't know what it is about Andys, them everywhere. But he was called Andy. And he was a little bit two parts to the wind. He obviously enjoyed himself in the bar at the pub next door. But he's loving it. He was fascinated by it. And that's what we've got to be. And people will walk in here blind, drunk and drugged up, and sinners and homosexuals and whatever. We're going to have that. We're going to have that. And we've got to be ready to help them. And in Jesus' name, and just bring them to Christ. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. And we have to be wise. It's wisdom. We have to be wise and we have to be watching out, because the world can't watch out for itself. It doesn't know. So all these arguments about what Charles said and everything like that, he's just a man. It means nothing to me. And his words, he's just a man. The truth, I believe, the truth that I believe is, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth and the life. And that's what I believe. It's such a simple gospel. Such a simple gospel, and that's the truth, I believe. And as I'm looking at the world at the moment, let's face it, there's nothing else, is there? And the youth, bless them. And I pray for the youth of this country, because they are being downtrodden, they're being oppressed, because they can't buy houses, my daughter can't afford to run a car, but every time she goes for a job, can you drive? So I pray for this youth. I pray for the youth of this country, of this world, because we can see what the enemy's trying to do. If the enemy stops, the enemy doesn't, he wants to destroy the human race. And if he can do that through getting to the youngsters first, he will, because the amount of births has dropped, because people feel they can't afford to have children. Fortunately, we've got Simeon and Paige, so they sort of help out. But genuinely, you hear people say, we can't afford children. Or they won't have children because, we know it's costing them, both of them, to pay the mortgage. They've both got to work. We can't, so we can't afford childcare. How are we going to do that? You can see how the enemy's working. We've got to be watchmen and we've got to be wise. And we've got to stand strong and we've got to tell people about Christ. Because Christ is the only truth in this world. Thank you.